Good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is May 5th, 125th day of the year. It's 240 days of these years old. This is also Cinco de Mayo, which is an annual celebration commemorating the Mexican Army's victory over the Second French Empire at the Battle of Puebla, May 5th, 1862. And holidays observances: National Astronaut Day, National Cartoonist Day, International Midwives Day, and Revenge of the 5th. World Portuguese Language Day, National Hoagie Day, Sleep Apnea Awareness Day, World Hand Hygiene Day, wash your hands once in a while. Melanoma Monday, National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, National Concert Day, Nail Day, National Meeting Planners Appreciation Day, Hug a Shed and Take a Selfie Day, African World Heritage Day, National Totally Chipotle Day, Silence the Shame Day, Netherlands Liberation Day, Early May Bank Holiday, Children's Book Week, National Lawyer Wellbeing Week, and Teacher Appreciation Week. And let's not forget Dog Anxiety Awareness Week. All that having been said, let's see what's in the news. Trump's going to meet with Canada's new leader after his disagreement with Trudeau over tariffs. President Trump's ordered the rebuilding of Alcatraz to house America's most ruthless criminals. Trump is also taking a swipe at the new leaders of the Democratic Party. That is AOC. He thinks she's had to cough. AOC thinks she is waiting to be coronated the next president. What he calls low IQ Jasmine Crockett and nut job Bernie Sanders, who are being touted as the potential leaders of the Democratic Party. And let's see. My system keeps going haywire here. Well, the Real ID is about to go into effect. I think it goes into effect May 7th. And it's going, if you don't have a Real ID, you can't vote. And that's supposed to keep illegal voting at a minimum. Let's see. Man was strolling through an Arkansas State Park and found a candy-like diamond. In fact, it's the largest found in the park for 2025 so far. And let's see. It's Crater Diamond State Park. Well, debt collectors are now going after student loan borrowers who are in default on paying their student loans. The Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, said the Biden administration misled borrowers. And a lot of millions of student loan borrowers are in default. And beginning today, they're going to get notices. They're being put into collections. President Trump offered Mexico U.S. troops to help the cartel, and Mexico said no. The New York Attorney General, who made it her mission in life to prosecute President Trump, is now facing fraud allegations. The very same allegations she brought against him. And most of her case was made up. the case against her seems to be solid. And let's see. There is going to be a national park renamed after Jocelyn Ngare. She was killed by an undocumented immigrant. 12-year-old Houston girl killed by 2 illegal immigrants. By John Cornyn and U.S. Representative Brad Babin from Texas. To make it more difficult for future administration to change the name of the park. Senator Grassley said President Trump should not have to ask permission from judges to actually govern, because we've got a lot of God's anointed who want to stick their mouth into how he runs the country. They have jobs for life, and that's not enough for them. They want to run everything else. Doge has helped gut the leftist lunacy at the, let's see, which agency is it? AmeriCorps, federal paid volunteer agency. They've been in operation for 30 years. Been fraud, false claims, political racketeering. It's failed 8 consecutive audits and gets $1 billion in taxpayer dollars a year. The agency's own Office of Inspector General condemned it in 2014 for a waste of taxpayer funds, lax oversight, unauthorized contractual commitments, widespread non-compliance with rules, regulations, and contracting practices. Well, they seem to feel they're above the law. Well, there was a shooting in Glendale, Arizona, inside a restaurant. 3 dead and 5 injured. Police haven't arrested anybody. It's at the El Camarón Gigante Mariposas and Steakhouse, according to the police department. Well, the evidence seems to point to the fact that there is a serial killer in New England. The 11 or 12 bodies found, and they don't have a clue as to what's going on. Well, RFK Jr. is not sugarcoating his thoughts on the fact that high sugar consumption is prompting healthcare warnings. Americans consume more than 2 to 3 times the recommended daily amounts of sugar per day. And you'd think that would make them sweeter, but it doesn't. And let's see, got anything else? Oh yes, Denver, Colorado is being sued over its sanctuary laws. It's being alleged that they interfere with immigration enforcement. And this is a sad news. Microsoft has shut down Skype after 22 years. They want users to use team programs. They bought Skype in 2011 for $8.5 billion, and they're shutting it down today, actually. Let's see. Anything else? There's a new book that talks about everything that Biden's team covered up to make it clear he was not in a mental decline. 60 Minutes is airing a segment calling President Trump a threat to elections and rule of law. According to Major General Dana Petard, airstrikes been relatively ineffective at stopping the Houthis. They basically are terrorists who operate in small groups until they come together to attack a ship. So there's not much to bomb. And of course, anti-Semitism is rampant throughout that part of the world. Well, under the label, having a good day, in a Czech forest, some hikers came across a historic treasure trove of gold and jewelry. Apparently they were stashed in the forest in the northern part of that country. They may have come out of World War II. Okay. I think that's got our news segment. You know, one of the things that have always fascinated me, and I've done a lot of shows about it, are ghosts and hauntings. You know, one of the most haunted places in any area have been military bases. Let's look at Babenhausen Barracks in East Germany, located in it's got a complex and somber history, built in 1901. It served as a training facility for German Imperial forces. World War II became a HUD for the Wehrmacht, where soldiers were both stationed and trained. But the darker aspects of its history began to emerge during that period. According to local accounts, the barracks was a site for Nazi atrocities, executions of deserters, imprisonment, mistreatment of political prisoners, and suspected resistance fighters. Following Germany's defeat in 1945, the barracks were taken over by U.S. forces upon the Allied occupation. It actually became an important facility for the U.S. Army during the Cold War. It was a base for both artillery and infantry units tasked with maintaining NATO's defensive posture against Soviet aggression. The site's significance during this period solidified its role as a key component of the U.S. military presence in Europe. Now, it was closed down in 2007 and given back to the Germans as part of the U.S. military's post-Cold War restructuring. And today, it's mostly abandoned, but the history, marked by military significance and alleged wartime horrors, remains a focus of interest. Locals and visitors alike are drawn to the site, not only for its historical relevance, but for the paranormal legends tied to its shadowy past. Now, the headquarters building at Babenhausen Barracks has long been the center of eerie tales of unexplained phenomena. Its ghostly reputation intertwined with the complex history of the area. It's built between 1900 and 1901 by the Germans. It's housed Hessian police, the Wehrmacht, and the U.S. Army. Served as a caserne, a riding school, and even a discharge camp for German POWs after World War II. Its most unsettling legacy is the hauntings that disturb its occupants. There's a story of a young German woman, Mrs. Mueller, who cast a long shadow over Babenhausen Barracks, tying its very reputation to the tragedies of war. During the early days of World War I, she was engaged to a soldier stationed at the barracks. When his fiancée, along with three comrades, got orders to fight in France, they won AWOL. And hoping to avoid going to the front lines, the four men hid in the attic of the headquarters building, assisted by Mrs. Mueller. Now, for several days, she smuggled food and water to the deserters, keeping them hidden. But their escape was short-lived. She was caught and the 4 soldiers were arrested. They were sentenced to death by firing squad, and they were killed. The shots rang out. She climbed to the top of the headquarters building and jumped to her death. At the very moment, the clock in the officers' club tower inexplicably stopped. Now, since that day, the headquarters building's been a hotspot of inexplicable phenomena. Soldiers have reported hearing footsteps in empty rooms, doors slamming shut without cause, and eerie coldness often settles over the building. Some claim to have felt a lingering presence, although Ms. Mueller still roams the halls, never to leave the site of her heartbreak. Now, reports from soldiers often describe unsettling sounds emanating from the building's 4th and 5th floors, areas that are locked and bolted at night. Footsteps echo across the wooden floors, furniture seems to scrape and move, and toilets flush without human involvement. Sergeant Robert Weaver, who once guarded the building, investigated a loud bang followed by creaking footsteps, only to find nothing. Others, like Sergeant Michael Wilson, described hearing running footsteps, the dragging of desks, and hours of unexplained noises. Now, despite a thorough investigation, no living person was ever found. Major Roy Highsmith recalled the sensation of being watched while working late in the building. He would glance toward the hallway, convinced he'd seen a figure pass his office door. But when you would check, you wouldn't find anybody there. Similarly, Captain Norman Cherry claimed to have seen a shadowy figure moving down the hall late one evening. The haunting reputation of Babenhausen Barracks might stem from more than its wartime history. Some believe the strange occurrences are tied to the town's infamous witch tower or Hexenthrone. The structure once served as a prison during the 17th century. Over 50 women accused of witchcraft were held there before their executions. They were marched to the marketplace and burned alive. Now, one of these women, a figure linked to Babenhausen history, was accused of killing 3 men through sorcery. And her death at the stake was only the beginning of the legend. Centuries later, in 1843, a woman believed to be her descendant met a similar end. Accused of witchcraft, she was stoned to death by the townsfolk. Strangely, on the day of her death, her lover also died under mysterious circumstances, which added a sinister twist to the tale. Well, the connection between the witch tower and the barracks becomes even more unsettling when considering an early incident after the barracks construction. Bodies of 5 German soldiers were discovered in the attic under unexplained circumstances. Whispers in the town linked their death to one identified in local lore as another Mrs. Mueller, rumored to have seduced and killed the men. Whether this story is true or folklore, it's embedded itself in the legends surrounding the barracks. And no station at Babenhausen Barracks reports strange phenomena up until the departure of U.S. forces. Footsteps of deserted hallways, whispered voices in empty rooms, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. These hauntings, together, though often attributed to the barracks' military past, bear an uncanny resemblance to the tales of torment and tragedy tied to the witch tower. So one question would be, could the barracks' restless spirits be the echoes of soldiers from wartime history? Or do the dark shadows of the witch tower reach further than imagined, entwining their fates with the barracks? We don't have an answer, but the lingering presence of Babenhausen suggests its story's not so easily forgotten. Well, from Germany, let's go to Afghanistan. Observation Post Rock, Helmand Province. Observation Post Rock, often referred to as simply OP Rock, is a remote military outpost situated in Helmand Province in Afghanistan. Established during the coalition operations in the region, its purpose was to serve as a forward observation and defensive position. Perched on top of an isolated rocky hill, it provided strategic oversight of key roads and villages and suspected insurgent routes, making it a vital asset in monitoring and disrupting enemy activity. Manned primarily by U.S. and coalition forces, including some Brits, OP Rock was frequently exposed to hostile environments, including harsh weather and frequent enemy attacks. And its location, while strategic, left it isolated and vulnerable with limited resupply options and little reinforcements. The outpost gained notoriety for its intense combat engagements as insurgents routinely targeted with small arms fire, mortars, and IEDs, improvised explosive devices. Soldiers stationed at OP Rock endured grueling conditions, often facing psychological and physical challenges due to the constant threat of attack in the barren, inhospitable terrain. In addition to its military significance, OP Rock has been linked to numerous legends and stories of paranormal activity among soldiers. There have been reports of unexplained phenomena such as shadowy figures and disembodied voices. They've been attributed to some of the turbulent history of the region. Countless lives are lost during years of conflict. In 2009, a team of 8 Marines was stationed at OP Rock, a remote observation post. They were warned by the British troops of a relieving of an oppressive atmosphere, initially dismissing this as mere superstition. The Marines quickly realized that there was something unnerving about the place. On their first night, strange whispers began emanating from the radios. Static-filled interruptions carried faint voices, some sounding Russian. Despite confirming no signals are being transmitted or received, the whispers persisted and, of course, left the Marines uneasy. A few weeks later, during a late watch, the stillness of the desert was broken by an intense, blood-curdling scream that came from nowhere. One Marine reported seeing a figure dart behind a bush, but a search the next day revealed no tracks or any signs of movement. And the unexplained events escalated. One night, a Marine felt a sudden drop in temperature during his watch, an eerie chill in the sweltering Afghan heat. Whispers returned, faint, unintelligible, accompanied by footsteps echoing above him on wooden planks. When he investigated, he didn't find anybody. Through his thermal lenses, he spotted a figure radiating heat, its fists clenched. When he lowered the lenses, the figure was gone. On another night, a Marine spotted a faint figure in the distance through binoculars. Each time he lowered and raised them, the figure seemed closer. Suddenly, he felt 2 sharp taps on his back, his team's usual signal, but found nobody behind him. When he looked back, the figure had disappeared. Final night brought the most chilling encounter. The radios fell completely silent, no static, no whispers. Then the sounds of gunfire erupted around the post as if they were under siege. The Marines returned fire, of course, but there were no impacts or visible enemies. And the distinctive whistle of an RPG cut through the chaos, but no explosions followed. And as suddenly as it began, the attack ceased, leaving them in an oppressive silence. By dawn, the team hastily packed up and left OP Rock. They were eager to escape its eerie grasp. In 2010, a team of U.S. soldiers found themselves posted to the outpost. What they encountered over the next 3-month deployment proved far stronger than the desolation of the desert. As the team began fortifying their position on OP Rock, they unearthed an unsettling array of human bones, relics, and remnants of past conflicts. They found a Soviet-issued helmet, a grim reminder of Afghanistan's brutal Soviet war. Scattered remains likely belonged to soldiers who had fought and died on this spot, never to return home. First night on OP Rock, one soldier stood third watch, peered through the night vision goggles into the dark landscape. Flashes of light appeared, seemingly resembling small arms fire, but there was no sound of gunfire. No crack of bullets flying past, and no tracer around and lighting up the night as they normally would. These lights danced intermittently, appearing and disappearing without explanation. A fellow soldier confirmed the phenomena, ruling out malfunctioning equipment or imagination. Occasionally, dim lights resembling faint flares floated down from the sky. But removing the night vision goggles revealed only impenetrable darkness. These unexplained lights became a recurrent event witnessed by all 4 soldiers over their time on the hill. The most chilling encounter occurred 3 weeks into the deployment. One night, as another late watch unfolded, the strange lights returned in force. They appeared everywhere, flashing and flaring as if the position was under siege. Soldier instinctively ducked for cover, but there was no sound of gunfire, no physical impact, only the haunting display of phantom lights. Then as abruptly as it began, the phenomena stopped. What followed shook the soldier to his core. A whisper, clear, angry, hissed in his ear. Boze, Prozai. Although he didn't know the meaning of the word, he recognized the language as Russian. Panicked, he spun around, ready to fire, only to find nothing. The night was still, the air was heavy. He was alone. Not until later he learned the translation, throw down your weapon. Later learned from local interpreters about the hill's dark past. During the Soviet-Afghan War, O.P. Rock had been a small Soviet outpost overrun by the Mujahideen. Every Soviet soldier stationed here was slaughtered, bodies left to rot in the Afghan sun, never receiving the dignity of burial. And the whispers and the lights and the oppressive atmosphere all seemed tied to these lost souls, their restless spirits, still patrolling their final post. And even with its strategic importance, O.P. Rock remains an unsettling place, one that bears the scars of past wars past. Inexplicable phenomena, the lights, the whispers suggest the hill may not be ready to relinquish its ghost. Whether the soldiers there are simply bearing witness to the echoes of a violent history or intruding on a haunted battlefield, one thing is clear. O.P. Rock is a place where the line between the living and the dead blurs into the desert sky. With Afghanistan, let's come back to merry old England. RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk. Now, RAF Woodbridge, located in Suffolk, England, served as a significant hub for the U.S. Air Force during the Cold War. Originally built during World War II, it was designed as a backup landing site for damaged Allied bombers. It features extra long runways and advanced lighting systems. In 1952, the base was transferred to the U.S. Air Force and became part of the twin base complex with nearby RAF Biltwaters. And together, the two bases play a key role in NATO's defensive strategy, hosting units like the 81st Tactical Fighter Wing and the 67th Aerospace Rescue and Recovery Squadron. The RAF Woodbridge primarily housed fighter aircraft, including the F-4 Phantom and later the A-10 Thunderbolt II, which were pivotal in ensuring the U.S. maintained a rapid response capability in Europe. The base also supported special operations, search and rescue missions, and other strategic activities. During its tenure, which ended in 1993 when the Air Force returned control to the UK Ministry of Defense, Woodbridge was a highly active installation, personnel contributing to key NATO initiatives and maintaining a constant state of readiness amid Cold War tensions. The base notoriety extends beyond its military significance. It was the site of one of the most famous UFO incidents in history. In December 1980, the Rendlesham Forest incident occurred in the woods between RAF Woodbridge and RAF Biltwaters, where multiple U.S. military personnel reported witnessing unexplained lights and objects. The event, often called Britain's Roswell, has since become one of the most well-documented UFO sightings, sparking decades of investigation and speculation. December 26, 1980, just after midnight, Air Force security personnel stationed at RAF Woodbridge observed unusual lights outside the base in Rendlesham Forest. Concerned about a potential downed aircraft, a small team was dispatched to investigate. It was crisp and cold, intensifying the eerie atmosphere as they penetrated the dark, dense woods. The team, including Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston, encountered an object of unknown origin emitting a bright white light that illuminated the forest. As they went closer, the air around them vibrated with static electricity, causing discomfort and confusion. Peniston described the object as triangular, approximately 3 meters across the base and 2 meters high. It seemed to be standing on a sort of landing gear with no clear markings of conventional aircraft being visible. On closer inspection, he observed the craft's surface was smooth and black, like glass or opaque acrylic, reflecting the beams in her flashlights. Intrigued, he circled the object, finding it completely devoid of seams or rivets, lavish signs of conventional manufacturing. The most unsettling feature was a set of blue and yellow lights pulsating around the object, along with the hieroglyphic-like symbols etched along the side, which he examined and even sketched in his notebook. As he reached out to touch the symbols, the texture felt warm and electric, unlike any material he'd ever encountered. And suddenly the craft's lights intensified, and he stepped back as the object slowly lifted off the ground, emitting a low-frequency humming sound. And it maneuvered between the trees effortlessly without disturbing the air or making any sounds typical of conventional aircraft. The team followed the light from a safe distance as it moved through the forest and rapidly ascended into the night sky, disappearing within seconds. Stunned by what they'd witnessed, the team returned to base. Next morning, they revisited the site with higher-ranking officers, including Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. found indentations in the ground where the object had been, burn marks on trees, and higher than normal radiation levels measured with a Geiger counter. 2 nights later, the object was sighted again, this time by a different group of personnel, including Lieutenant Colonel Hall. His team observed a similar craft projecting beams of light onto the ground, moving rapidly in sharp angular patterns impossible for conventional aircraft. He recorded these observations in real time on an audio tape, which documented the group's attempt to understand and describe the phenomena that unfolded. Well, the Undersham Forest incident concluded with more questions than answers. Despite various theories ranging from top-secret aircraft tests and extraterrestrial visitations to a hoax perpetrated by the British Army and the misidentification of the nearby lighthouse, no definitive explanations ever been provided. Physical evidence, witness testimonies, and military involvement lend the incident a credibility that continues to intrigue both skeptics and believers alike. All right, from Witnessing Forest, let's go to Fort McNair, Washington, D.C. Fort McNair is one of the oldest military posts in the country. It's situated at the confluence of the Potomac and Anacostia rivers in Washington, D.C. Dates back to 1791. Originally designated as a site for defense, its importance was recognized early on, so it was developed into a pivotal military installation. Now, throughout its history, Fort McNair has undergone several transformations, played a number of critical roles. Initially named the Washington Arsenal, served as an arsenal for the storage and manufacture of weapons. During the Civil War, it gained notoriety as a prison for the conspirators in President Abraham Lincoln's assassination. In fact, 4 were executed on its grounds in 1865. Well, in the 20th century, the fort was chosen as a site for the Army War College in 1881. Institution dedicated to the advanced study of military science and strategy. 1953, base was renamed in honor of General Leslie McNair, who was stationed at the fort but died during Operation Cobra, and the post has since been known as Fort McNair. In modern times, it continues to hold a significant place in U.S. military strategy. Houses the National Defense University, which provides high-level education in national security and resource strategy to certain military and civilian personnel, usually friends of folks in high places. Fort also hosts the American Defense College. Focuses on fostering multinational cooperation in defense and security throughout the Western Hemisphere. Now, with a history marked by notable events and continuing role in military education and strategy, Fort McNair remains a key asset in the defense infrastructure of the U.S. One story tied to its officers' club has persisted for years. The club's Pershing Room, named in honor of General John Blackjack Pershing, is said to be home to an unexpected and decidedly physical haunting. Army also made a disparaging remark about General Pershing while in the Pershing Room. What happened next left everybody shocked. He claimed to have been hit so forcefully he ended up flat on his back. Dazed and shaken, he quickly picked himself up and left the room, as you might guess. Now, Pershing, who commanded the American Expeditionary Forces during World War I and served as military governor in the Philippines, was a major figure in military history. Known for his leadership of the Buffalo Soldiers during the Spanish-American War, his nickname Blackjack reflects a storied and sometimes controversial legacy. What the officer's encounter was an act of indignation from beyond the grave, or merely a case of nerves in historic space, that story has certainly become part of the mystique surrounding Fort McNair. Also at Fort McNair, and the spirit of a woman continues to make her presence known, Mary Surratt was the first woman executed by the U.S. government, convicted for her involvement in the conspiracy to assassinate Abraham Lincoln. She was hung July 7, 1865, alongside 3 other conspirators. Now, Grant Hall, located inside Fort McNair Barracks and steeped in history, has long been associated with reports of ghostly encounters tied to its past. This building, formerly used as married officers' quarters, later as an office space, was the site of the trial and execution of Mary Surratt and her co-conspirators. A number of accounts have emerged of unexplained phenomena. Residents and visitors have reported encounters with the ghostly figure of a woman resembling Mary Surratt. Children in the building, sick with fevers, have been calmed by the appearance of a mysterious figure. When asked why suddenly they became quiet, they said the lady standing behind their parents, signaling them to be quiet. Children picturing Mary Surratt, these children consistently identified her as the figure they saw. In addition to these sightings, former residents described coming home to find their home in complete disarray. Furniture overturned and belongings scattered despite the building being securely locked. Similarly, employees using the building as office space reported finding chairs flipped upside down in mock conference rooms with no explanation for the disturbances. One particularly unsettling account involved a Catholic chaplain stationed at the base in the 1990s. Former Golden Gloves boxing champ, he was accustomed to facing challenges, but he eventually chose to leave the building altogether. Late one evening, he returned to his locked apartment to find the washer and dryer in the laundry room inexplicably turned to face the wall. A rearrangement that left him deeply unnerved. These persistent reports of ghostly activity and a haunting dimension to Grant Hall's already somber history, suggesting that the echoes of its past may still resonate inside its walls. A former serviceman stationed at Fort McNair talks about one of the most inexplicable occurrences. A strange path that occurs in the snow, spanning nearly 300 yards, 2 feet wide and a foot deep, exposed into bare grass underneath. Thus precisely among the rocks she walked from the jail where she was held to the gallows, where she was hung for a crime a lot of folks believe she didn't commit. There's no physical explanation for the phenomenon. No pipes, no heat sources, no machinery, just a spectral trace of her final journey. Her presence isn't confined to the snow. Residents reported hearing her cries for help, her weeping echoing through the stillness of the night. 1989, an Army captain experienced one of the most harrowing encounters. Living in a building that once served as her prison, Captain Osborne awoke in the early hours of Abraham Lincoln's birthday to the sound of a woman sobbing. Cries grew louder and transformed into a desperate plea. Help me, oh no, help me. Racing outside to investigate, he didn't find anybody. The night was silent, the cries vanished as abruptly as they began. The historian once tasked with overseeing activities at the historic Clinton House had an unsettling encounter. That house, rumored to be haunted, has always given her an inexplicable sense of unease during late-night visits. The air seemed heavier. The hairs on the back of her neck would stand up as though she wasn't truly alone. But one night, during a meeting with 4 others on the second floor, the group was startled by the sound of the front door opening up. Minutes later, loud, deliberate footsteps echoed through the hall below. Those heavy steps, as if made by a woman wearing sturdy 19th century boots, paced back and forth before halting in the center of the house. Gathering their courage, the 5 descended the stairs to investigate, only to find the door securely shut and no sign anybody had come in. Nothing in the house was out of place, leaving those involved to wonder about the unseen figure that had shared their evening. Among the most enduring stories is the reported sight of a spectral figure, clad in black and bound hand and foot, eerily reminiscent of Mary Surratt at her execution. Witnesses described a figure moving effortlessly despite its restraints, with a hooded head drooping unnaturally close to its shoulder. Adding to the eerie atmosphere, a military couple shared their experience of a peculiar experience in their home on the base. They reported that a specific window pane would inexplicably fog up at night. They later learned that was the very window from which Anna Surratt, Mary's daughter, said to have watched as her mother was executed. The lingering sorrow of that moment seems to echo through time, leaving an indelible mark on the grounds of Fort McNair. Well, from Washington, D.C., let's turn to Texas, specifically Fort Concho. Located in present-day San Angelo, Texas, it was established December 1867 as a U.S. Army installation to protect frontier settlers, oversee westward expansion, and ensure safe travel along the Butterfield Overland Mail Route. Strategically positioned near the Concho River, the fort became a vital outpost in securing the region against raids from Native American tribes, particularly the Comanche and the Kiowa. By the mid-1880s, with the diminishing threat of Native American resistance and expansion of railroads, the need for frontier forts waned. Fort Concho was decommissioned in 1889, and many of its buildings fell into private hands and were into disrepair. Now today, Fort Concho is a National Historic Landmark and a museum, offering a glimpse into frontier military life. Restored structures and reenactments preserve its legacy as a symbol of the American frontier and the soldiers that served there. Fort Concho said to still host some of its former residents in ghostly form. Visitors and staff have reported a variety of paranormal activities over the year, from rare apparitions to moving objects and the inexplicable scent of roses lingering in unexpected places. Well, one of the fort's most famous spirits is that of Edith Gerson, 13-year-old daughter of the post commander in the late 1870s. Described as sweet and lively, she tragically succumbed to typhoid fever September 9, 1878, in the upstairs bedroom of officer's quarters number 1. Despite her untimely death, a lot of folks believe her spirit never left the fort. Florist living flowers had a peculiar encounter. As he climbed the stairs to place the arrangement in two upstairs bedrooms, noticed a sudden drop in temperature. That was a sharp contrast to the warmth of the foyer below. Entering the first bedroom, he nearly stumbled over a young girl sitting on the floor playing a game of jacks. The child didn't look up or acknowledge his presence, and assuming she was part of the household, he put the bouquet on the nightstand as instructed before moving to the second bedroom. When he returned to the first bedroom, on his way out, the girl was gone. Oddly, the flowers had been moved to a table and her jacks now set neatly on the nightstand. Well, as he prepared to leave, a portrait above the fireplace caught his attention. The girl on the picture bore a striking resemblance to the one he had seen upstairs. Mentioning this to the resident, he remarked on how the child had moved the flowers. The woman said that she didn't have a daughter and revealed the chilling truth. The girl, Edith, had died in that very room, and others had seen her lingering. One overnight visitor also reported an encounter with unexpected presence. They described seeing the apparition of a cheerful, mild-mannered girl dressed in a peach-covered gown with her hair neatly pulled back. She seemed so lifelike that at first they assumed she was part of a reenactment. But in actuality, that description matched that of Edith Grierson. Other visitors stayed in the upstairs bedroom. It contained a large iron bed with a rug underneath it. Throughout the night, the sound of footsteps ascending the stairs was heard, and by morning, the rug was meticulously folded and placed under the bed. This rearrangement seemed impossible without significant noise and effort. We should have awakened the visitor sleeping in that room, but it didn't. Another spectral presence tied to Fort Concho was Lieutenant Francis Henry French, the last officer to serve before the fort's closure in 1889. Known for his love of gardening, French ordered rose bushes shortly before departing. Fort's visitor and volunteer services coordinator told her own tale of an encounter tied to French. While preparing for an event in officers' quarters number 6, Lassabase detected the distinct scent of roses filling the foyer, stark contrast to the usual earthly smells of the old building. Only later did she learn about French's fondness for roses, cementing the connection to his lingering presence. Now let's talk about Colonel Ranald Mackenzie, legendary figure known for successful campaigns against the Native Americans, earning the moniker Mackenzie's Raiders alongside his men. Respected for his tactical prowess, he left an indelible mark on history, and his legacy seems to linger in an unexpected way. Some tales of his spectral presence in his former home. Situated in Officers' Row, Mackenzie's residence offered a commanding view of the fort, a feature the colonel reportedly cherished. From this vantage point, he could observe nearly all activity within the grounds, a detail that seemed fitting, given reports that his spirit remains watchful even in death. One chilling encounter was reported by a female staff member working in the building. Alone in the house, she heard the distinct sound of footsteps behind her. Turning to confront what she assumed was another person, she was instead met with an icy blast of air that pushed her up against the wall. The oppressive cold was accompanied by an unmistakable sound of knuckles cracking. This detail led her to believe that the entity was Mackenzie himself, who was known to habitually crack his knuckles in life. That experience left her shaken, adding another layer to the legend of Mackenzie's ghost. Whether he roams his beloved home out of duty, attachment, or something else, Colonel's spectral presence continues to be felt by those who cross his path. And during the holiday season, the staff members working late in the headquarters building when they witnessed a figure in a blue soldier's uniform pass silently by. Supposedly the only person in the building at the time, the witness left the room to confront the unexpected visitor, only to find they were actually the only person in the building and the doors were locked. Leading apparition was intriguing enough to prompt further investigation into the history of the fort. Records revealed that a second sergeant stationed there had been the only soldier to die at the location. The sergeant, known for his struggles with chronic alcoholism, passed away on Christmas Day. And ever since then, witnesses reported sightings of this spectral figure. Most often, the apparition is seen standing at a window, gazing out as if searching for something or someone. Well, Fort Concho's rich history and tragedies that occurred within its walls seem to have left an indelible mark, but from the cheerful but tragic figure Vita Grierson to the floor echoes of Lieutenant French, the fort continues to captivate visitors with its ghostly tales. Also, keep in mind, if you will, that these are just the stories that folks have repeated or written about. There are many, many other stories. From Fort Concho, Texas, let's go to Gardena Air Base in Okinawa, Japan. Gardena was once known as the Keystone of the Pacific, due to a key strategic location. It's on Okinawa, the largest active military base in East Asia. Built in April 1845 and originally named Tara Hikojo. It was used by the Imperial Japanese Air Force. The construction barely been completed when, during the Battle of Okinawa, one of the war's bloodiest conflicts, the island fell under U.S. control in April of 1945. Following the battle, U.S. military began expanding airfields on the island to support ongoing operations. After the war, Okinawa remained under U.S. occupation, and the base was further expanded. And during various conflicts since that time, including the Cold War, Vietnam, and Korean Wars, became a critical forward operating base for U.S. forces. It served as a hub for air operations, surveillance, and as a deterrent against potential adversaries in the region, most notably the Soviet Union and later on North Korea. In 1972, Okinawa was returned to Japan. However, Gardena Air Base has remained under U.S. control as part of an agreement between the two countries. And today, the base is one of the largest, most strategically important U.S. military installations in the world. It hosts a variety of U.S. Air Force units and aircraft and serves multiple functions, including air combat, readiness, and humanitarian assistance missions. Building 2283, a single-unit family home on Gardena Air Base, became infamous for paranormal activity. Consequently, it was repurposed as a storage facility. It was so reputedly haunted that ghostly tours were held there every Halloween. I can identify with that. I did ghost tours here in El Paso for 20 years. Until people who thought they had a quick way to make money pretended to be me and did their own tours, using my books as their guide. During these tours, several strange occurrences were reported. I'm talking about the ones at Gardena Air Base. On one occasion, a tour guide recounted the house's history. Curtains in a window parted as if somebody was peering out, even though there was nobody in the house. Another time, a tour group heard an old phone ringing inside, even though the phone line had long since been disconnected. Next to Building 2283 was a daycare center where teachers reported that children would throw toys over the fence into the garden, claiming the children on the other side told them to do so long after that building had been vacated. Family previously assigned to the house reported cold spots, the sounds of children crying, and a woman seen washing her hair in a utility sink. In 2009, when the building was demolished, workers reported headaches, hallucinations, and a high number of on-the-job injuries. So what caused the supernatural activity in Building 2283? Well, it was rumored that an Air Force officer killed his family and then himself in the building. The next family that lived there reported feelings of paranoia and sadness and unrest, leading to another tragedy. Following this, the property was boarded up. And while the story is chilling, of course, there's no concrete evidence supporting it, and Air Force officials at the base refused to comment on its authenticity. Another apparition said to haunt the same area as Building 2283 is that of an ancient samurai warrior who reportedly rides through the front garden and into the living room. That would definitely interrupt your TV time. Now, Building 2283 is the only location on the base rumored to be haunted. Next to the base golf course are the entrances to some caves. When the U.S. occupied the island in 1945, the new base commander ordered troops to convert nearby caves into air raid shelters. When they entered one, they found it full of cots and medical items. Legend has it that 17 nurses committed suicide there after the Americans captured the airfield, and it's their apparitions that are said to haunt the caves. Locals avoid the caves, citing numerous sightings of these spectral nurses. During a quiet overnight shift at Kadena Air Base's Defense Operations Center, a security officer got a 911 call. The line was filled with static before abruptly disconnecting. Protocol dictated there be a response, so a patrol unit was dispatched to the location. An abandoned building near the flight line, enclosed inside a gated area. On arrival, the patrol reported back that an eerie observation, the building was entirely empty. Its rooms were stripped bare. When the Base Defense Operations Center officer relayed the incident to communications personnel, is met with disbelief. They insisted that it's not possible. That building has no active phone lines and no capability to make a call. Well, that of course disturbed the officer. Before long, another similar call came in during the early morning hours, just after 1 in the morning. Static crackled throughout the line, followed by a click and silence. Again, a patrol was sent, and again they found nothing but an empty, lifeless structure. Well, this baffling phenomenon repeated itself multiple times over that officer's tenure at Kadena. Each time the calls came in the dead of night originated from a building and it couldn't have made them. Static-filled 911 calls, inexplicable emptiness of the building became a chilling mystery, leaving those involved to wonder what or who was trying to reach out. One quiet night, a technician in the 909th at Kadena Air Base was finishing up a job in the boom pod of a KC-135 straddle attacker. On in the jet, he heard the sound of footsteps moving in his direction. The metallic clink of somebody climbing the ladder to the aircraft was unmistakable, followed by the thud of footsteps on the cargo floor. Well, he assumed it was a colleague stopping by to check on his progress, so he didn't pay any attention and continued to work. After he completed his work, he began packing up his tools and suddenly realized he hadn't seen anybody. So he glanced down the length of the plane, expecting to spot the visitor, but the cargo bay was empty. Puzzled, he assumed they had to be on the flight deck reviewing forms, and he went there only to find it completely deserted. That's when another thought hit him. He hadn't heard the ladder creak again, the sound somebody would have made when they left. The duck pond, nestled within Kadena Air Base's bomb dump, has long been the source of unsettling stories. One night, a service member was driving near the pond when she noticed something strange, a small wet child standing alone by the side of the road. Startled, she slowed her vehicle, her headlights illuminated the figure just for a moment before she passed it. And when she glanced in the rearview mirror, the child was still there, standing silently, drenched and motionless. That image lingered with her long after she drove away, which raised the questions, who or what was the child, and why was it there in the middle of the night? Well, not far from the pod, the munitions inspection building harbored its own strange phenomenon. An old disconnected phone mounted outside the building would inexplicably ring. And on the rare occasions it was answered, the only response was static, followed by silence. Well, maintenance crews investigated and confirmed the phone line had long been disconnected. There was no explanation for the cause. These eerie occurrences continue to fuel speculation about the supernatural lingering in the shadows of the base. Sightings and phantom calls are chilling reminders, even in the most routine settings, the unexplained can find a way to manifest itself. On that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow and talk more about haunted military posts. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.